Welcome back to the MovieBabble Podcast. As always, you can check us out online at MovieBabbleReviews.com and join us this week as we talk about the opening weekend for Hustlers as well as the Goldfinch. Alright, so breaking down this weekend's top 5, we've got It Chapter 2 at the number 1 spot, once again with 40.73 million, followed by Hustlers with 33.2 million, opening up in the number 2 spot, and then Angel Has Fallen is in number 3 with 4.4 million, Good Boys in the number 4 spot with 4.26 million, and The Lion King once again rounds out the top 5 with 3.55 million. So It Chapter 2 actually didn't have that bad of a drop for a horror movie. So horror movies are notorious just for having these really steep drops just because, nobody really wants to see the same scares 2 weekends in a row just because they're not nearly as effective. So horror movies really struggle with keeping momentum. So for it to have a 55% drop is actually pretty good, pretty solid. And I think it's just a testament to how big Stephen King is, how big the first movie is, and just, how pleasant and enjoyable this sort of mini franchise has been the past 2 years.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is a pretty good drop for this film, 55% in its second weekend. I think they're going to be really happy with that. And they released it at a good time, right? September's not a really busy time. Hustlers this weekend really did prove to be a kind of a force at the box office. It did really well, which is good. And then Ad Astra coming out next weekend will probably, that's kind of a wild card for me. I don't know how much of a draw that film will have. Space movies are kind of spotty. You never really know how they're going to do. Brad Pitt, obviously there's a lot of star power, but you never know. So we'll see with that movie when it comes out. But It Chapter 2, it's a really solid second week, and I think that they'll be really happy with this. And worldwide now, well over 300 million. They're making their money.
Yeah, and Nick and I talked about it last week. I don't think this is going to reach the same heights that It Chapter 1 did. It Chapter 1 crossed over 700,000 worldwide, which was just absolutely phenomenal for a for a horror movie. Even by Stephen King standards, it was just huge. But it has been a pretty big success so far. It's making superhero level money at this point. Nobody's going to be super upset with it. It's a moneymaker.
For sure.
Um, so that kind of wraps up everything on its performance. Hustlers, which we will dive into a little bit more in depth later on, but has just been an astronomical success by all expectations at this point. It opened up at 33.23 million domestically, which is, that's insane. So its production budget is estimated around 20 million. It's sitting at about 37 and a little over 37.5 million worldwide after its opening weekend. So Hustlers has definitely become one of the more underrated hits for this year, and especially as we get into this fall.
Yeah, for sure. I think that Jennifer Lopez has a lot of star power, but the concept of this film and the story it was based off of, as well as kind of just the rave reviews out of TIFF, I think that's what propelled this movie. Because you look back earlier at the film's second act starring Jennifer Lopez, and that movie didn't really go too far. It had decent legs, but it didn't really open up that strong. This movie's different. It has great reviews, great kind of steam out of TIFF, and people want to see this thing. And $33 million first weekend is huge. It's going to kind of expand in most of its foreign markets in about 2 to 3 weeks' time. This movie's going to turn a great profit and be a pretty big success.
Yeah, it's definitely a win, and coming out of a summer where we didn't have many wins like this, it's honestly kind of refreshing just to see something making money.
No, for sure. And STX Entertainment, they definitely need that. It hasn't been the greatest year for them with films like Palms, The Best of Enemies, UglyDolls, um, even Second Act. Like these films haven't been too great for them. The upside was huge, but Hustlers looks like it's going to be their kind of big movie this year.
Yeah, it's definitely a good victory for them. So we'll move on to Angel Has Fallen. Again with 4.4 million. This is an action franchise that is just pulling in a modest profit. Not really much else to say about it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I
And
think that it's the mix of just not much is out right now, and it's going to be really playing off that.
yeah, and I think Good Boys in the number 4 spot is really kind of along those lines where there's not really any competition, so there's not really much of a fight to put up at the box office. So it's a good time for movies to just kind of hang on. And then the top 5 is rounded out by The Lion King, which is sitting at over 1.6 billion worldwide and had only a 17.8% drop this past weekend, which is just phenomenal. As far as numbers wise goes, like this movie has been obviously one of the year's biggest hits, but it is also one of the biggest surprises, and it just does not quit. Like it is going.
Yeah, for sure. This movie is just continuing. I mean, it's probably gonna kind of drop off big time in the next couple weeks. Just with kind of we're getting away from the summer box office movie season. You're gonna have Abominable come out this month, which I don't know how that's gonna do money wise, but that's an animated movie they're gonna throw in there, kind of a family friendly movie. The Addams Family in October. So I mean, this movie isn't gonna stick around for too much longer, but it has definitely made the most of its 9 weeks at the box office so far.
Yeah, like it is a giant. It is it's doing stuff.
For sure.
Uh, so we will round back to Hustlers, which I think is one of the best marketed in a short window movies we've seen this year. So I don't really remember seeing anything as far as promotional trailers or hype for this until about a month and a half, 2 months ago, and it leaned like really heavily into this whole strippers uh, conning and making money off their higher profile sleazy clientele, and they really pumped out that Cardi B and Lizzo were in it, as well as I mean J Lo's headlining it, and so it has a lot going for it cast wise. I wasn't really wowed by the trailers, and I am happy to say that I was wrong for the most part. I definitely have problems with this movie, and I don't know if it deserves as much of the positive praise as it gets, but it was far better than it really deserved to be or had any right to be, and was just a really solid effort.
Yeah, I mean, this is a movie that, as you said, it wasn't really on my radar, and it wasn't really kind of being marketed that heavily until, even for me, I don't think I really picked up on this film's release until August or so. I don't remember seeing many trailers at all, but they definitely did a great job with kind of short window marketing, and I think probably TIFF really boosted that. Now, I haven't quite seen the film yet. I'm checking it out on Tuesday, so I'll be checking it out very soon. But this is the type of movie that you really don't know if it's going to be great until you see some of the reviews come out, and you can kind of tell that this movie took its premise in a different direction and did something with it based off those reviews. So I'm definitely excited to check that out on Tuesday. But yeah, they did a great job, kind of short window marketing this film, and coming out with a $33 million domestic opening weekend, first opening weekend. That's pretty big for a film that is even rated R as well.
Yeah, and I think a lot of this movie really came together in the edit, and with reshoots. There are definitely parts of it that just feel a little off. Like Julia Stiles is in this movie and has a like she drives a good chunk of the story forward, but like she wasn't in any of the promotional material. I had no idea she was in it until she just pops up on screen like 30 minutes into the runtime. But it definitely feels like she was kind of added on much later. Just the way they frame her as a reporter, kind of diving into the story, but was really well done in that sense. And then also with Cardi B and Lizzo, they don't have just a huge role, despite kind of being the main feature of the trailers. But they do some stuff, and I mean, whether you like them as people or music, they do keep the movie interesting. So props to them.
For sure.
And yeah, it's just Hustlers has been just again, like you said, really strong box office performance. I don't think anybody really expected this level of an opening weekend from this at all.
No, and I mean even the buzz out of TIFF is that a lot of the articles kind of coming out of TIFF are saying that Jennifer Lopez is kind of the early Oscar favorite. She might have some Oscar buzz for this movie. Now, I still have yet to see it, so I'm not going to kind of judge that until I do see it. But I'm just kind of stating what's kind of being said by some of the critics. Now, it is really early, and a lot of movies that do get that sort of buzz don't always tend to hang on. But it is early in the campaign. It's early in kind of award season. I mean, it's September. The festival's kind of just started wrapping up with Venice and TIFF and all that. But this is good news for this film, and I think that if it does have legs and people will keep coming out to see this thing, or good word of mouth spreads from this big first opening weekend, then this movie could have some decent legs and buzz heading into the next few months.
Yeah, and I think the biggest challenge with this movie is going to be it's not marketed really as what it actually is. So it's marketed as kind of this crime thriller, which it definitely does have really strong elements in that vein, but it's a really a much more kind of down to earth mother daughter story between J Lo and Constance Wu, and it like you don't really get to see a lot of that in the trailers. I didn't really have any idea that was going to be the nature of the movie, but that's really where it shines, in my opinion, is just how they handle that and handle just the life that they live and living in New York and working this degrading job while stocks are going up and then the market crashes, and you just get to explore a lot of really interesting themes and avenues of New York in that sense.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's definitely recommend it. At the beginning of this week, if you had asked me what movie I was seeing this weekend, I would have said The Goldfinch because Hustlers looked terrible. But having seen the reviews and then walked out of Hustlers, I am now glad I flip-flopped on that. And it's definitely one to check out. I really don't know how it would fare in award season. And I mean, like you said, we are kind of at the beginning of that, so it's a little bit premature to, trying to be pegging things with Best Picture, unless of course you're Disney trying to get Endgame that nomination. But it's definitely one to watch as we go forward. And so we will talk about the complete opposite of Hustlers in terms of critical and commercial success this weekend.
Yikes.
And that is The Goldfinch, which I think was just really poorly marketed, which I think we're seeing the result of that. So it's got a $45 million budget. Opening weekend, it's pulled in a grand total of $3.625 million worldwide, which is about as floppy as you can get at this point. And it's just, I think it was terribly marketed. I really don't know what this movie is about from the trailers. There's a lot of art heist elements to it, but it's also drama about a boy who lost his mother. And I don't really know what this movie is about, having seen the marketing materials. And I think most audiences kind of saw that as well and were like, well, what is this? Why would I want to go see this? And just when the reviews hit, this has been absolutely panned by critics. And so I think that's a huge part of its failure as well.
Yeah, you know what? So this film is based off the book, the same name, The Goldfinch, which came out in 2013. It was a bestseller, and it won the Pulitzer Prize. So that's kind of, for fiction, that's kind of the top award you can really get in the book kind of industry and novel industry. So I mean, you have to make a movie based off a book that is kind of regarded that highly, but I think that they just didn't make a good movie. I mean, I'm not gonna. I mean, I still might check it out. I mean, but it's really kind of disheartening with all those reviews, and maybe they knew that it wasn't gonna do that great. Maybe they wanted to just kind of rush it out days after its TIFF premiere. I thought that was kind of odd. Because you kind of look at Hustlers and The Goldfinch, you can kind of see parallels there. Like Hustlers comes out at TIFF, and it's literally having its opening weekend 4 days later. Maybe the reason for that is, do you want to capitalize on the great buzz right away? The Goldfinch premieres at TIFF, literally 3 or 4, maybe 5 days later, it's out in theaters. Maybe they just knew it wasn't going to do that great, and they would kind of just wanted to get it over with before people completely forgot about it a month or two from now. Now, overseas in Europe, this movie might do, it's not going to do a ton, but it still has a lot of markets yet to open up in the coming weeks, so we'll kind of see how it does there. But domestically, this is a huge flop, and they'll be lucky worldwide if they are to break even with that 45 million. I think that they might have a chance at that, depending on how things go in Europe. But this is a pretty rough opening weekend for the Goldfinch.
Yeah, it's really disappointing. I mean, looking at how big this budget is compared to how much it's earning, and with nothing but negative reception so far, I don't really see it having any kind of rebound. I think this is going to be a loss for Warner Brothers, which, I mean, they can sort of handle it. I mean, they had Aquaman last year, so they're not hurting for anything. Um, but yeah, the Goldfinch is just kind of disappointed across the board, which, even though I didn't really know what to peg it as, I was still interested in it. I mean, its cinematographer is Roger Deakins, which he is kind of the greatest of all time when it comes to framing an image. And so I was really just captivated by kind of the visual sense that you see in the trailer. And from what all the reviews I've seen, it's, yeah, that visual sense is just beautiful. But what's actually there under the surface is just a complete flat mess.
Yeah, and it's rough, but I mean, as you said, Warner Bros. They're having a good year. It Chapter Two is going to kind of help them out a little bit, and they're going to continue to make money from that. Joker's going to help them out big time. So I don't think they'll hurt too much, but this it isn't good for them. But it's kind of just a misfire on all regards, and it sucks to even talk about that because I really like the cast in this film, and I thought it had pretty good potential. So it is. Kind of upsetting to hear this, but that's the Goldfinch.
Yeah, it is just kind of a sad day for Ansel Elgort fans and and fans of the Goldfinch, the book, but that's where we're at. And yeah, I think this is definitely going to go down as one of our bigger flops this year. And I mean, we've actually had a decent batch of flops. If you look at a lot of the blockbusters this summer with Dark Phoenix and Men in Black International, and I'm sure as we get into more of the artsy award season movies, we'll probably see some more. But this is probably going to be one of the worst we see this year.
Yeah, I think I would probably agree there.
Yeah, so that is the box office for this weekend. But this weekend was also the host of the Toronto International Film Festival, which I know you had a little bit of a chance to attend. So we'll just talk about that a little bit. I know I've heard lots of good things about the movies I wanted to hear good things about, and so I'm pretty pleased with what's come out of it so far.
Yeah, it was a great experience. I only got to spend one day there, which was yesterday. So I mean, just kind of scheduling wise, I wasn't able to kind of be there for as long as I would have wanted. So I just kind of got to squeeze in a Saturday downtown Toronto, and it was great. I got to check out Uncut Gems, the Safdie brothers' newest movie starring Adam Sandler. It's kind of a crime thriller drama with a little bit of comedy pinched throughout, and it's a fantastic film, and I'm definitely excited to see it again when it hits theaters in December. A24, they're just making great movie after great movie, and this is no exception. I mean, if you thought Good Time was a good film, because I know that movie has kind of built up a pretty good fan base since it came out a couple years ago, starring Robert Pattinson. I like this movie a lot more. I think the Safdie brothers were able to not only learn from what they did in Good Time right, but expand on it and kind of polish it up a little bit. And they made a really good film here. And it's always great to see Adam Sandler kind of actually attempt a performance. I mean, usually he's kind of just portraying himself. And I mean, he's kind of the guy that you kind of like his movie. He doesn't make great movies, but he's kind of the guy that you just like, yeah, whatever. It's Adam Sandler. People don't really hate him, or if you do hate him, you kind of love to hate him. I mean, he's kind of that type of guy. I mean, he's got some of those comedies that we grew up with that are not great movies, but we like them because we grew up with them way back in the day. He's got a bunch of misfires kind of this last decade, but I love seeing him kind of step out and actually make an attempt at really portraying someone other than Adam Sandler. And he does a great job in this movie, and I can't picture anyone else playing the role that he had in this film. So I definitely recommend Uncut Gems. I also saw a Russian film, Beanpole. It premiered at the Cannes Film Festival several months ago, and that was a pretty good film as well. Not as highly praised for me on that end, but definitely a good time at TIFF, and I would definitely recommend checking it out in the coming years if anyone wants to check it out, because it is a wonderful festival, and the caliber films that are there are just always great, and they're really good at kind of predicting who's going to win, not win Best Picture, but who's kind of going to make a big play in award season, because TIFF it's a pretty prestigious festival, and there's a lot of great stuff there.
Yeah, and I mean, this is the second or third festival that I've heard nothing but praise for Parasite. So that's definitely one to keep watching as it slowly opens up in the US. I'm not sure exactly when its wide release is. I know it's premiered a little bit at some festivals, but definitely one to watch as that South Korean movie makes a little bit of a wider debut. I know Jojo Rabbit is one that we've all talked about on this podcast, and I believe on Babble with Brennan as well, which is Taika Waititi's next movie, his anti-hate satire. And I heard pretty much nothing but positivity for that. Won the People's Choice Award, which is pretty prestigious. And I'm sure there's other stuff. I mean, there are tons of films that debuted and that were seen, but those are some of the highlights. And yeah, Uncut Gems is definitely one that I know Nick and I have been keeping an eye on. And it's just nice to see Adam Sandler do not Grown Ups and not Jack and Jill, and just do a little bit different stuff.
For sure. And kind of going back to that People's Choice, I think that's definitely something that we should definitely kind of talk about here. So yeah, Taika Waititi's Jojo Rabbit won the People's Choice Award, which was kind of a surprise win in my opinion. The movie definitely had a lot of great reception, but it also had a couple mixed reviews from critics. The movie wasn't kind of universally acclaimed, but the neat thing about the Toronto International Film Festival is that the highest award, the People's Choice Award, is voted by the people that attend the festival. Critics, fans, anyone who's there can vote. It doesn't really have like a jury or like a set festival group of people who watch each movie and kind of pick their own favorite, like some of the other major festivals. So it's kind of interesting in that regard. So I was pretty surprised today when that kind of came out and won, but I think that will keep a lot of people's eyes and ears on this movie for the next little while. I think that really boosts this movie's credibility and also just prestige as it gets its release in October. The runners-up for the People's Choice, the first runner-up was Noah Baumbach's Marriage Story, and the second runner-up was Parasite. So, yeah, as we're saying, I mean, these movies are making some big plays. And also, I think one that you're super excited for, Knives Out, huge praise out of TIFF. I mean, the praise out of TIFF that I was hearing for that, I was thinking that would win People's Choice Award. I actually thought that had a good shot at it just from what I heard that night and all the tweets that were coming out from everyone that attended that screening. And I'm just so pumped for that movie. I want it now. So yeah, TIFF was good. I mean, I think that a lot of the films that people were really looking forward to got a lot of praise, and there weren't many movies that ended up being duds. And even though Jojo Rabbit wasn't, as I said, universally kind of praised across the board, it still won the People's Choice Award, and I think that is saying something, and I think that will kind of give it a lot of legs kind of moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an exciting time of the year where we have stuff like TIFF and with Venice last week, and we're just starting to get buzz about all these great movies that we won't be able to see for 2 or 3 more months. But it's just a good time to get excited about movies, and I really am optimistic about this award season and this fall and winter season, just because we had such a disappointing summer, but we have a lot of these smaller, just really interesting, really kind of bold premise films coming out. I mean, we've got Ad Astra coming out here in the next 2 weeks. And then we've got Jojo Rabbit and Knives Out and Parasite and Uncut Gems and so much other stuff. And I'm just excited to pick up the pace a little bit in terms of movies that are good.
Yeah, I agree for sure. And Ad Astra is another one that got kind of great festival praise as well, and that's a movie that is coming out soon, and I'm looking forward to it. I think that this year in general is just looking so much better than last year already, and I think there's going to be so much more of a variety of really good, prestigious films. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to kind of the next few months, and TIFF was a great indicator of what's to come, and what's to come is looking good. A lot of these bigger movies that are getting great buzz as well are Netflix films. Marriage Story being a Netflix film, and I think that's that's huge. I think that they're really making a play this year. I mean, Roma last year, Ballad of Buster Scruggs last year. Those are big awards plays, Roma especially. But this year it looks like they're going to have several kind of top flight contenders, not just kind of one Roma that is kind of their big juggernaut. Ballad of Buster Scruggs did get a couple nominations as well at the Academy Awards. That's a big awards film. Don't want to downplay that, but Roma was just the juggernaut last year, whereas this year it looks like they might have a few different juggernauts. I mean, Marriage Story, Irishman, those are kind of two on their own there, but Netflix is really coming out strong this year.
Yeah, and I mean they've got The Irishman coming up, which is pegged to be kind of their, I think their most aggressive awards push, just because this is such a large scale and it's something that was turned down by most of the major studios because Scorsese just wanted just an astronomical sum of money for a crime movie like this. A budget of 159 million was one of the earlier estimates I saw. And so Netflix is definitely getting much more aggressive, which I think with Disney Plus and all these other with literally everybody putting out their own streaming service, I think they really have to. So there's definitely going to be a lot of contention between them and just the traditional movie studios. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out when we do get to the nominations. And could this be a year where we have two streaming based movies, or what if even half the ballot is streaming based movies, and what does that look like going forward? And so it's interesting stuff industry wise to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah, for sure. It's gonna be an interesting year, and really, I like this because it's really exciting. I mean, last year was a year where there was a lot of there was not only a lot of anger around award season, which there always will be. It's kind of hard to avoid that, but in addition to that, I don't think there was that much in terms of just really great movies last year that were contending. And I think this year it's going to be beefed up a lot, and I'm really looking forward to the fall, and it's going to be great.
Yeah, and one other movie that I want to kind of call attention to coming out of TIFF is also Honey Boy, which is a Shia LaBeouf led movie that is based on basically a fictionalized version of his life and his childhood, and working with his being a star on Even Stevens, and having a dad who was kind of manipulative in that sense. And I've heard just praise from it coming out of Sundance early this year, and praise for it coming out of literally every other screening it's had. And so this is another one that I'm definitely excited for.
Yeah, Honey Boy is one that I've been really looking forward to for a while. I mean, this is like Shia LaBeouf literally wrote this film while kind of in therapy. He was in rehab, and he was writing this movie to kind of help himself through that. And I think that's just kind of cool in and of itself. I mean, that he wrote this movie about his kind of own life, and he literally gets to play the fictionalized loose base version of his father. I mean, it's going to be a really interesting watch, and I'm really looking forward to that one as well. That's definitely really high on my list for kind of most anticipated films of the fall movie season. And Shia LaBeouf, it looks like he's having a pretty good overall year. I haven't quite seen The Peanut Butter Falcon yet, but he got great praise for his role there. I'm pretty sure you saw that film, but it's looking like he's going to have a few movies this year where he really kind of gives it his all, and maybe is kind of a dark horse at the some of the award shows.
Yeah, and I feel like Shia LaBeouf fits in somewhat of the same box as we've talked about Robert Pattinson a lot, and
100%.
even Kristen Stewart, where like, oh well, they were in these cringy movies from the late 2000s, early 2010s. Like we really shouldn't take them seriously. But you look at especially going with something this year, you have High Life with Robert Pattinson, and you have Charlie's Angels, which will probably be Kristen Stewart's biggest non-Twilight thing in terms of marketing and awareness and all that. And so I think Shia LaBeouf definitely fits in that. Where yeah, he did go off the deep end for a little while. He wore the paper bag to, I believe it was the Academy Awards, but he's really seemed to start coming out of it on top. And I think Peanut Butter Falcon was a great example of that. And from what I've heard of Honey Boy, I think Honey Boy is just going to kind of reiterate that, not only is Shia LaBeouf a talented, creative entity, but like he makes good movies and he does interesting things that other people aren't doing.
100%. I'm really looking forward to these films, and it's always great to kind of see someone kind of get their life together and come out on top, as you said. And I would 100% put him kind of in that same category as guys like Robert Pattinson, Kristen Stewart. I mean, I think that he definitely fits in with their kind of vein of how they came to be in the industry. I mean, huge franchises that were frowned upon by critics, and you kind of either love them or hate them. Transformers, Twilight, but they really kind of step back from that. They've done a lot of indie films over the years. They've kind of built up their prestige. They've really tried a lot of different things, and they're all kind of coming out on top here. And it's kind of a cool full circle of a decade for a lot of these actors and actresses.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think we're just going to keep seeing more of them, hopefully, based on the success we've kind of seen from their work so far. I know I'm definitely excited for it. I think Nick is too. I'm going to say that based on our conversation just today, I think you are as well. And it's just, there's lots of cool stuff. It's an exciting time.
For sure, 100%.
So that kind of wraps up this weekend at the box office. Again, this was the opening weekend for Hustlers and the Goldfinch. One of those movies we'll probably be talking about for a little while longer. The other one of those movies, I'm going to say we will not be talking about for much longer. But honestly, this might be the last time we have to talk about The Lion King too. We're starting to get into a little bit busier of releases. So next week we've got Rambo Last Blood, which who knows how that's going to do. Downton Abbey, which is kind of in a similar boat, depending on where you're at Astra, and Brittany runs a marathon are expanding. And so it's starting to get a little bit more crowded, more to talk about, more to kind of dissect and have fun with.
Yeah, for sure. I think next weekend's going to be real exciting, and a lot of diverse options at the movies. So it's going to be great for the fans, and it'll be a pretty exciting box office next weekend.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the MovieBabble Podcast, and join us again next week as we talk about the opening weekend for Downton Abbey and Rambo Last Blood. And as always, you can check us out online at MovieBabbleReviews.com.